So yeah, I love Japan, and every time I go to a new place, I fall in love with it more and more each time because it is unique here. It's not really like anywhere else. It's got its own vibe, its own culture, and there's something for everybody here.
And we're here with Ellie Rayner. Ellie, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. Series 2 of the podcast is in full flow, so it's been very hectic. But so there's so much to explore, even though you've only been in the sort of TEFL world for a couple of years. It's actually pretty incredible what you've been able to do in just over 2 years. So you started training for a TEFL certificate in 2020. What inspired that? What inspired that decision?
Well, I think like most people, it was COVID, and I was thinking what I wanted to do with my life. So I had a job before where it was lots of travel, and then that stopped. And I was thinking about my future and what I wanted to do, and fulfilling dreams that I wanted to do for a long time. And it was just the perfect opportunity. I was at home, the course is online, and I thought, why not? I've got the time, and just see what happens. So I decided to sign up to it. And it was great because I can sit at home and do it, and I could do it in my own time. So it was good for me.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm right, you worked in cruise ships, specifically looking after children. And obviously, as you said, the pandemic was always going to cut that short. But how useful was that experience working with kids when you emerged as a teacher? Like, what technical and emotional skills did you develop doing that?
Well, working with kids, it can be very unpredictable. So kids don't really come with a script. So you have to learn to improvise. And sometimes they can, even like now, they can come to school and they might not be in a good mood. And you have to try and lift them up and get them excited and motivated. And yeah, children, they all have their own personalities. And sometimes kids are going to love you and sometimes they're not going to connect with you. So you've got to learn to create an environment that they still want to be in. And you've got to, just be that kind person that they can feel comfortable around and that they can talk to and that they want to see you every day. They look forward to seeing you. So yeah, I learned a lot of skills on the cruise ships. We used to have a lot of kids on there. So it was interesting to have that many kids and learn how to look after them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking, I remember going to school in a bad mood, so I can definitely relate to that. But, so I'm interested to know what drew you to Asia specifically, and Japan in particular. So what was it about the continent and Japan in particular that made you want to move and work there? Did you have much experience of Asia from your job working on cruise ships, or what was it?
No, so I'd never been to Asia before. I'd been to lots of other places in the world, and I'd stopped at airports in Asia, but I'd never actually been. So I've always been fascinated by the continent because it's so different from our own country and, where we live. And I was always interested in the spiritual side, especially in Japan. And I came to Japan wanting to learn more about temples and the history and the culture of Japan. So I've always been interested in the history and just the culture and how people live and how it's different to how we live here or in the UK or anywhere else in the world. So yeah, I was always drawn to Japan because it's always on TV. It's always on Instagram. It's everywhere you look. Japan is just everywhere. And I was thinking, well, why do so many people love Japan? What is in Japan? I want to go and see. So I actually applied for the job here, never visiting, never came here before. And that was kind of scary, but it's also really exciting because you're going to learn about this country and the new job all together. So it was a good opportunity just to kind of take that risk and just go for it.
Mm-hmm. So was it particularly daunting knowing that you're going to start a completely new line of work, but also adapt to being in a new country? Was that, what were the first kind of experiences like there?
Yeah, so it was a lot when I got here because you're learning a whole new job, you're making new friends, You're learning about a new country and you have a new apartment and a whole new life. But I always wanted to do it. So I think there was something in me where I was just like, I've got to do this. And I think a lot of people have that calling, or they have that urge to emigrate and go to a completely different country. And it's something in you and you're just curious. You want to go and see what it's like. And I think the most important thing I got told was just be kind to yourself when you first get there. Don't go into the job and expect to be perfect. Don't think that everything's going to be great or it's going to be amazing, because it's going to be hard at first and it's going to take you a few months to settle in. But the longer you're here, the easier it gets. And as time passes, you get used to things, you learn little techniques, you learn about your area, you learn so many things about where you're living that it gets a lot easier. And then you start to enjoy it. And you're glad that you did it after a while. You're like, yeah, it was scary and uncomfortable at first, but then it starts to get more rewarding. And you start to enjoy little moments and it gets better.
Well, yeah, I mean, talking of little moments, actually, so there was something that really struck me in the biography that you sent me, where you said, I think there was a line where you said you didn't think you could do it. I'm going to say, like, yours is a particularly encouraging story for a lot of young people who want to learn to teach English, but they don't know if they have the skills to do it. Obviously, it turns out that you do. So was there a particular moment? Was there a particular moment when you were teaching early on where you thought, actually, I can do this, I can do it well, or was it kind of progressively building confidence?
I think that's an interesting question. I think it's a bit of both. I think that over time you do grow in confidence and it does start to get easier. But I think it's just little things. So for me, when I was doing the TEFL course, I remember meeting a teacher who gave me so much encouragement. And I think she said, oh, you're going to be a great teacher. And sometimes it's just somebody saying that to you because you don't believe it yourself. And I think it was when I started teaching online, when every week I would log on and I was teaching to children that I'd never met in person. And they were so happy to see me. They were so excited. And you think, oh, I'm doing something right because they're happy. They're looking forward to seeing you. And you start to think, yeah, I'm a teacher that they are enjoying seeing every week. And then you're like, no, I can do it. And then for me now, I'm starting to see with my students, because I teach children and adults, I'm starting to see them improve in their English. And when you start to see your students improve in English, you know you're doing something right because they're growing in their confidence and they're starting to use new skills. And then that's coming from you. So I remember when I was, I think before Christmas, I was teaching a class and we had presentations and the parents came to watch. So it's quite scary for them. It's a bit nerve-wracking for me. And I hadn't been at the school very long. And we did the presentations and the parents were really happy. The kids did great. And I came out and the other teachers were like, wow, well done. And I was like, oh, no, it's not me. My kids are great. They're just really good kids. And they were like, no. They were like, it's all you. It comes from you. And I think that's really important. You know, if you've got kids that are doing well, it does come from the teacher. If you put the effort in, you will see the reward. So I think over time it happens. But also, it's just those little moments when people have those nice little comments that you're like, no, I can do this. And don't overthink it. Just kind of go in and try your best. And if the kids are happy, they're going to produce that English anyway. So, yeah, I think it's a mixture of both.
That's an interesting one, actually, because, like, I don't think anyone else I've spoken to has been like, well, taking a compliment is a really good skill. And it's true. It is true. So going back to the TEFL course briefly, what were your favorite parts of doing that? It was 140 hour you did, right?
Yeah, 140. Yeah. So what is quite interesting is my favorite part was the grammar part, which I think is usually people's least favorite. And I wasn't expecting to really enjoy it. But I think what I liked about it was, as a native speaker, we go to school and we're not actually taught English and, you know, why we use English or how we use English. It's just taught to us and we use it instinctively. So for me, it was really interesting to learn, okay, this is why you do it. And this is like the technical name for it. So I was speaking and I didn't know what I was actually doing. So for me, learning about that was just really interesting. And it gives you the confidence to go into a class. And if the students ask you anything about grammar, you can be like, oh, I know this, you know, and it was good for me to have, you know, that training and have that confidence to say, yeah, I know the grammar now, because a lot of native speakers, they don't know the grammar. So I think it's really important that you learn it, especially when you're going to go and teach it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, it's such an important thing, like being able to deconstruct the English language, even if it's your native language, because, and I guess probably long term it makes learning other languages a bit easier as well. But there was something else from your biography that sort of picked up on, and it sounds as though, even though it was an online course, you were able to build a sort of little community of teachers. What's that like when you're doing an online course? How easy is it to sort of network with other people, and have you been able to sort of give each other advice as you've gone on? Like, have you sort of kept in touch with anyone?
So yeah, that's another good question. So I did mine during COVID. So as part of the course, as you know, you're supposed to go into a classroom, but we couldn't. So we did ours online. And I was really, really nervous about it, thinking, oh, what if people aren't nice? You know, you get nervous when you're meeting people for the first time.
Sure.
So when I did my online course, everyone was so nice. And they were from around the world. And it was great because you were meeting people that were like you. They had the same dreams as you, the same ambition. And everyone was so friendly and encouraging. So I think the first time I did a teaching demo, I messed it up. And everyone was really nice about it. And then the next day I went in and it went better. And it was just like, I didn't feel nervous because they were such a nice group. So with that group, I haven't actually kept in touch with them because I kind of, after that, went straight into a job and then got busy and just didn't exchange any numbers. But I always remember them as being a really nice group of people. And then when I started teaching online, I met a new set of people that were also in the industry. And then, you know, you can message them even when you're teaching online. And it doesn't feel as isolating. You can keep in contact, talk to other teachers and say, how do you do this? Oh, I do it this way. And, you know, you give each other the tips and advice. So that's really nice.
Feeling inspired? Fancy trying something completely new? Well, make your best move yet by signing up for a TEFL course with the most highly accredited provider on the planet. Here at the TEFL org, we offer a range of online and classroom courses that you can study at your own pace. All of our courses include top-of-the-range teaching materials and come with dedicated tutor support from experienced and highly qualified TEFL experts. And what's more, we'll give you money off to do it. Just enter the code PODCAST at checkout to get 50% off any of our internationally recognised TEFL courses. And that includes our best-selling 120-hour Premier online course. With that code, you'll not only get 50% off, but you'll also get a free lesson plans pack. Within a matter of months, you could be a qualified TEFL teacher, out there exploring the world, or working to your own schedule from home as an online English teacher. Just use the code PODCAST at checkout to get started.
So you overcame your initial worries, you got your TEFL certificate, and you were meant to start this dream job, which we'll get to in Japan in November 2021, but COVID, Japan's strict border policies. How frustrating was that wait, and how did you overcome? I mean, you must have had some impatience to get started in Japan because it was a dream, and then it went from being sort of this sort of inaccessible thing to being something that was within reality to something that you had to wait a bit for. Like, how did that feel? Because it was all kind of quick.
Yeah, I remember this time last year feeling a bit kind of down about it because I just wanted to go. You know, there's nothing worse than when you want to go somewhere and it's no one's fault. It's just that you can't go and it's just nothing you can control. So I was feeling like a little bit down and like, oh, what am I going to do? And what if it doesn't happen? What if I lose the opportunity? But I started teaching online to adult students and they were in Japan. And that was something that really helped me because we would have free conversations. So sometimes we would do lessons and sometimes we could talk about anything. And they would talk to me a lot about Japan, and I would talk to them about the UK, and we would do English lessons together. And that really helped because it just made me feel closer to the country I wanted to go to, speaking to people from there. And I think it is hard to be patient. But sometimes it's not going to be COVID. Sometimes it could be visas. Sometimes it can be all these other things that stop you from going. And you just have to stay calm and just, reevaluate and just keep going, keep motivating yourself. It will work out. But sometimes there are just things that are not in your control. But it's okay. You will get there eventually. But just try and keep yourself busy. And for me, just working in the TEFL industry, I felt closer to it. Even though I was at home, just, going online and teaching, I felt like I was still doing it. So that helped me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, to go back to a wee bit, confidence is a thing that's come up in a biography that you wrote for us. So at the very least, even though there was that frustrating wait, it must have felt incredibly affirming when you got offered a job in Japan, going from oh, I'm not sure I could ever do this, to within so little time of completing your TEFL certificate, getting an actual job offer. So although there was that frustration, that must have felt pretty amazing, right?
Yeah. So I applied for the job, and it was a long day. It was like a tough interview, and there were so many people that wanted it, and I was just thinking, oh, I'm not going to get it. And I think the best thing is to just, even though it was my dream and I really, really wanted it, I was like, I've just got to pretend I haven't got it and just keep looking for other things, because I can't put all my hopes into this in case I don't get offered it. So I was like, just keep your options open, even though it was the dream. But they did get back to me very quickly. And it is the best feeling when you get offered that job, because somebody is also saying, yeah, we see something in you that we believe you can come and teach. And that gives you that confidence that we were talking about. It was a good feeling, and it is a big compliment to have that job offer. Even on the interview day, I met some great people, and those people that I interviewed with actually ended up being in my training group in Japan. So, it was great. It all worked out really well, and they all went through the same thing that I went through. So even though you can feel very alone, you're not alone. And there's so many other people going through the same thing as you. You just haven't actually met them, but you will meet them, and then you'll find out it wasn't just you that was maybe feeling a little bit frustrated.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. So, you're finally able to make that move. You're able to make Japan your home in 2022. So, this childhood dream becomes a reality. But what's taken you by surprise since you moved? Has it been everything that you hoped for? Has there been anything that, you weren't expecting to be so important? Or just give us a sort of general kind of vibe of what it's like to be in Japan now.
Well, it's amazing. I always say that to people. It's so much better than I thought it was going to be. So I thought it was going to be really good, and it's actually just even better. So I live in Kyoto, and it's a beautiful city, and there's a lot of things to do here. And every day when you go out, you see something different. So you can walk down the street and you can think, oh, I know this street. And then you'll go down again and you'll see something else. And, when you're by yourself as well and you're walking to work, you'll see little patterns and little things that you like. And it's just those little things that I love. So I see a lot of women in kimonos, and I just think it's so beautiful. And it's like that culture. And, there's lots of interesting little shops and old buildings. And it's just really, really beautiful. And what is really surprised me, or has surprised me, is how friendly people are here. So when I go into the shops or restaurants, people are just so kind here, and they're so nice, and it's just a really nice environment to be in. So I don't speak Japanese. I speak a few words. I'm not very good. But if I go into a shop and I struggle, people are helping me, and it's just a really nice environment to be in. I love Japan, and every time I go to a new place, I fall in love with it more and more each time, because it is unique here. It's not really like anywhere else. It's got its own vibe, its own culture, and there's something for everybody here. So it doesn't matter what you're interested in, or, you know, even like seasons. If you like winter, there's stuff for you to do here. If you like summer, there's stuff for you to do here. Like whatever you're interested in, there's so much going on. And sometimes I get a little bit overwhelmed on my days off because there's so much to do and I don't even know where to start because there's just so much going on. So I absolutely love it here. And I'm really glad that even in those hard times when I struggled, I'm glad I persevered because it is worth it. I mean, to realize a dream like that, that's such a cool thing. I don't have the words for it. So Thank you.
You teach both adults and kids in Japan. So it's a bit of a simple question, I know, but it's probably quite an important one for people who are listening and watching. What are the major differences there in terms of teaching different ages, and what's the learning culture like there? Are classes sometimes hard to control, or is it very sort of kind of teacher friendly? Like what's the overall feeling?
So the differences between kids and adults for me is when you're teaching adults, they want to be there. So they've got that motivation, they're paying, they want to come. So when you're teaching adults, they are going to be very eager to learn. They're going to ask a lot of questions. They're going to show up. They're going to have their notebooks. They want to be there. And with the kids, I say a lot of kids, they enjoy the lessons and they enjoy learning. But some kids might not want to be there. Their parents are signing them up. So you have to make it fun for them and an environment where you have to try and make them have fun and get them to use English, but they might not even know that they're using English. So if I set up a game, I want to make it as fun as I can, but every time they're doing something in that game, they're saying something in English. So then I'm keeping the parents happy, you know, because the kids will be getting ready for their exams and I'm getting them using those key structures. But I'm also trying to keep the kids happy. They want to have fun. You know, they might be coming in after school. They're probably tired. So I've got to motivate them as well. So, yeah, the differences are if you're a teacher, you're going to use more energy in a kids class. You're going to be up and down. You're going to be getting involved in the games. You're going to be a little bit more tired with the kids. With the adults, they might ask you some hard questions. And mentally, you've got to think about things that, you know, like the grammar. And you've got to think about, okay, how do I word this? Or, you know, you're going to maybe thinking a little bit more about the structure and how to use the language. But I'd say in Japan, the teaching culture is really good. It's the kids are really respectful. Right. And I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I've never had major behavior issues. I might have a kid that's tired or a child that's very young and crying, but you can always overcome that. And I feel like in a lot of my schools, I have the support. So if I am struggling in that moment, which I've never had, but if I was, I have people there to help me. I'm not alone. And that's great. Yeah, I think the kids here, they're very respectful as well. And they're very happy and smiley. But, you know, kids are kids all over the world. So they're not always going to be in the mood. So you have to really just be aware of that and know your classes, get to know the personalities of the students. And, you know, for some classes, if they're super advanced, I might change a couple of the games for them. If I have a class where, you know, they're a little bit more hyper and energetic, I've got to think about that as well. But yeah, I think teaching in Japan is really nice. I really enjoy it. It's really good. But just if you're teaching kids, just make sure you've got that energy. Have a snack before you go in because you're going to be moving around with them a lot. And with adults, yeah, it can be like a little bit more chill, but it can still be stimulating. You can have good conversations with them. So yeah, I really like it.
And of course, there's sort of a middle ground as well in terms of teaching teenagers. Now, you mentioned in your biography that you wrote for us that you actually really like teaching teenagers. And oddly, even though I think outside of people who haven't worked in teaching or TEFL might think teenagers are the hardest to deal with, you're not the first person to say that, like, actually teaching teenagers is amongst the best things you can do as a teacher. So, so what's the difference between teaching teens and like the other age groups that you deal with? Because I think people might be surprised by that.
Yeah, so I'm a person that I've never been interested in teaching teenagers, and I've always been a bit nervous of teaching teenagers. But in Japan, teenagers here are quite shy, and they don't have much confidence. So I think when we think of teenagers, we think, oh, they can like talk back to you and they can be quite rude and everything. But in Japan, they're very, very quiet. So when you first start teaching them, you're not always going to get much conversation out of them. And it can be a challenge. And it can be probably the biggest challenge that you have. But what I like is every single week, I go in, they get used to me. I use all my different teaching skills to get them to talk. I don't have that much time with them. So every week I try and, achieve a different goal. But over the months, you'll start to notice your teenagers will have more confidence and they will start to talk more. And then they'll start to be more engaged with you. And you can start to see that they're not shy anymore. They're getting more confident and they're getting confident in another language. And I'm at the point now where I'm starting to have a laugh with my teenagers. I'm starting to have fun with them. Whereas before I couldn't imagine that. And I like the lessons. I like teaching them. I like seeing, their confidence grow because, they're at that age where they're insecure, they're nervous, they're teenagers, and you're building their confidence. And so it's very rewarding. And I like going in and seeing them every week, and I enjoy the lessons. And yeah, it surprised me that teenagers are my favorite so far, but they're great. And when you get to know each student in the class, like I said, you can have fun with them and have a laugh with them. And it's really enjoyable.
I just wondering actually, just while we're kind of thinking about this, so there's a lot of Japanese culture that's really popular in Western media to sort of British and American and Canadian teenagers. They're into stuff like anime, they're into the music, some of them are into like the video games and stuff. Is there anything from the UK that Japanese teenagers really like that we might think, oh, I wouldn't really expect that?
Oh, I actually don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think I would ever actually ask them. Maybe I should ask them that question. I think they like music, like the same sort of music. So I know, like, for example, in the UK, we love like BTS, and that's like South Korean, and we sort of like pop music from Asia. But also I think here in Japan, they also like the music that we listen to. And they also have their own music. But yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else that they really like. But one thing that does come up when I'm teaching all different students is I'd say like all of them are interested in the UK. So all my students, they either have been to the UK or they want to go to the UK. And they're as fascinated by the UK as we are about Japan. So they're very interested and they want to visit as well. And I say to my students, I say, people in the UK, we all want to come to Japan. We all want to go on holiday here. We love it. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And then they'll say the same thing to me. They'll be like, oh, well, we want to go to the UK and we love it. And I'll be like, really? And it's really interesting how we both love each other's cultures, but we maybe don't know that. So that's something that I've observed. Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. I'm just, I just worry that there's some places I've been, particularly in Scotland, where I worry about like a tourist coming over and being really disappointed. But like it's fine. It's a learning curve. Okay, so we'll be back with Ellie Rayner and we'll talk to her more about teaching online and teaching in Japan.
Are you looking for a weekly guide to what's going on in the TEFL world? Do you want some advice on everything from job interviews to underrated TEFL destinations? Well, the TEFL.org blog has it all. Every single week, we tackle some of the biggest questions in the TEFL industry. Stay up to date with the latest trends in English teaching, find tips to make your next job application your best yet, or get inspired and read about the experiences of TEFL.org graduates teaching all around the world. Whether you're brand new to the industry or you've seen it all, we can guarantee an interesting read each week. To find out more, go to tefl.org/blog. That's tefl.org/blog.
So, while you waited for the borders to open in Japan, you taught online to both Chinese and Japanese students, as we covered. Mm-hmm. Now, how much did that online teaching inform the classroom teaching that you do now?
That was so useful and so valuable to me. So when I first started teaching online, I was a completely new teacher. And the problem that I had was I was very nervous going into my classes, which is natural. You know, you're going to be nervous.
Yeah.
But when you're nervous, you tend to speak too much and you say a lot of words that you don't need to say. So especially when I was teaching children, my graded language was appalling. It was so bad. I was saying so many things that I didn't need to say. And the kids would look very confused. And I remember at that company, they gave me so much advice and so much help. And they helped me with the graded language. And I always knew that was the thing I had to work on. And I didn't know that I was working on it until I came to Japan. And when I did my training here, I was like, oh, you know, graded language, I'm really bad at. I'm not good at it. I need to be aware of it. And then when I got here, they were like, your graded language is really good. It's great. It's perfect. And I was like, I didn't even notice that that was getting better or that I'd worked on that. So kind of by practicing online, that really helped me. And I think I would have had massive problems if I didn't have that experience. And yeah, I think it's just graded language. Obviously, I'm getting more used to teaching. I'm getting more confident. I'm not as nervous. Even now, I can get a little bit nervous going into a class. But as long as I'm using those skills and following what I'm supposed to be doing, the nerves go. And then you start to enjoy teaching and you enjoy the class, you enjoy the students. And you're always going to be a little nervous before you go in. But the students are also nervous as well. But you'll get to that point, like 5 minutes in the lesson where, yeah, you'll start to get into the flow, you'll start to get into it, and then the nerves will just disappear, and you'll be fine. And the students will be happy, and you'll be happy, and the lesson should flow quite well.
Great. So what would you say are the most kind of significant differences between online and in-person teaching, other than obviously, you know, physical proximity? Because there are going to be people listening to this and watching this who they're not quite sure what route is for them. Like, they might like the idea of teaching in a classroom, but they maybe want to get some online experience, or they want to run their own, you know, go freelance teaching online. What would you say that are the key things for people that people will notice when they follow either route?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I love both. I like being in a classroom, and I also loved online. So online is great because it depends which company you're with, but usually you can sort of do your own schedule. So if you're somebody that wants that freedom and that flexibility, and you also want to just be at home in your own comfort, like, you know, the comfort of your own home, it's great for that. But the other side to online teaching is sometimes you don't have someone to speak to, like next to you, like you would in a school. So just bear that in mind, that it's all going to be online. And some people might prefer that. Some people might be like, oh, I'm a bit more sociable. But what was great about online teaching is if I wanted to go somewhere, I could just take my work with me. And I remember one time I went on holiday and I just took the laptop with me, and I taught in the morning and then was on holiday in the afternoon. And it's great because you don't get that in other jobs. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's more relaxed. I think teaching online, it gives you a lot more freedom and flexibility. But then also teaching in a classroom is great because I don't know, like you've got that classroom feeling, you've got the energy, you can have more students in the class. Speaking to them face to face makes a big difference as well. It's nice to be in a school, and you know, when I'm playing the games with the students, I can be in with them. Yeah, I think both have got pros to them, and I loved both. I loved the online and I loved being in a classroom. And I would say to people, if you can experience both, just keep experiencing as much as you can and find what works for you, because what works for one person might not work for another person. And it depends what sort of lifestyle you want to have. But online is definitely more relaxed. And in the classroom is more like energy, and you have to be more involved. But it feels more like real teaching as well in the classroom, because you've got the whiteboard and, you know, you stand up at the front, and it's good. It's fun to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, something that, again, people who listen to this or watch this are going to be concerned about or curious about is the TEFL job market. But you were able to get a job pretty quickly after getting your TEFL qualification. So what advice would you give to people who are applying for jobs, or they're thinking about applying for jobs, and they're a bit worried that maybe the demand's not there, or that they're newly qualified, so they're not likely to get a job? Like, what would you say to people who are having those kind of anxieties?
Well, I'd say don't, because like you said, I got jobs very quickly, and even in between jobs, I've not had to wait long. I would say just research what you want to do, so the market you're interested in. And for example, if you're looking at countries and you say, I want to be in South Korea, or I want to be in Japan, the TEFL website was great for me because it has a lot of information about, you know, your pay and what you can expect, and you know, what they're looking for. So I'd say just find what you're interested in. So for example, in Japan, there's a huge demand here right now for TEFL teachers, and that demand is going to keep on growing, because in schools here in Japan, they're starting to push English more and more. So they've always taught it, but they're starting to make it more of a core subject. So with that, there's going to be more of a demand for TEFL teachers, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So there's a huge demand for teaching. So you're always going to get that job. And don't worry about being new. I think a lot of people like the fact that you're new. They like the fact that you're fresh, that you're coming in with energy. It's good to have experience. It's really valuable, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to get that job. If they like you, you will get that job. So I'd say just keep researching and just keep applying, because I found there were loads of jobs in all different areas, online, in the classroom. There was so much opportunity. And even if you get a job and you think, oh, it's not for me, you can quickly go into another one. There's such a high demand that I think there's always going to be that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. That's great, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about TEFL, especially in terms of, like, there's this kind of cliche that it's for young people, but also that you need experience to get a job and all that stuff, which doesn't really track. Like, those things are contradictions in terms. No. So I think that's going to be really, really useful for a lot of people who are listening to this. Mm-hmm. So how easy is it to travel and to have a social life while you're teaching in Japan? Like, what's the workload like for teachers? And have you been able to have both, like, a satisfying kind of life outside work as well as a really exciting work life?
Yeah, so I work 5 days a week and then have 2 days off. So I have like a normal working week. The only thing is, when you're a TEFL teacher, is you're probably going to be working on weekends. And so your 2 days off are going to be in the week. But I like that, because it means that it's not as busy when you go out. And it's something that I really like. But yeah, I've managed to do a lot already. So when I'm working and I have the 2 days off, I have done a lot of day trips in Kyoto and around Kyoto, and I've seen and done a lot already. I haven't even been here that long, and I feel like I've done a lot. And we also have holidays. So I've just had the winter break, and I managed to do a lot of traveling around Japan, and I went around Shiga area, which is next to Kyoto. And I also managed to go to Hiroshima. So I took the bullet train, and I felt like I did a lot. And like I said earlier, there's so much to do in Japan that we do have the time to do it. And I've also booked a trip to Tokyo in February. So I've got lots of things coming up and lots of traveling. And in terms of social life, when I was training, met great people, made great friends, and we don't actually have the same days off together. So it can be hard to see them. But we do have national holidays, and we have the holidays to meet up with each other. So I still get to see them. And I've also made friends with other teachers in the school, and some of them have been in Japan for years, and they've given me great advice. We go out to dinner. A lot of them have married like Japanese like women, and I've met their girlfriends and their wives, and it's been amazing because I've met not only expats but also Japanese people. I've met people that, you know, live here and have been here their whole lives, and they give me great advice about where to go. So I feel like I can teach a full week. I can put everything into my students, and then I also have that time off to socialize and travel. So it all fits in nicely. And what I found when I was on my winter break was you can feel like you're on a gap year. You know, you're sort of like filling up your backpack, you're going traveling, you've got all this freedom, and you feel like, yeah, I feel like I'm on a gap year, but you're working, so you can fund it. You've got the money to do everything you want to do. It's not like you're struggling. You've got like the best of both. You're earning that money, and then you're also free to go and enjoy it. So it's a nice sort of feeling that you're free, but you're also, you know, you're doing something as well that's rewarding and positive.
Now, you said you wanted to move to Japan since you were young. So now you've been there, you got to grips with the culture. For someone who's curious about traveling there, or indeed like working there like you do, in terms of Kyoto and the surrounding area, what are the absolute must-see attractions? Like, what do you have to do if you visit Kyoto or the surrounding area?
Oh, but the thing is, like, there's so much to do in Kyoto. I don't know how tourists actually do it because there's so much. So you've got a lot of temples. I think there's like over 2,000 temples. And you've got like the big attractions that you've got to see. So you've got like the Golden Temple. I actually haven't been there yet, which I need to go to. And you've got Gion, which is the very old area. And that's where you'll see the geishas. But what is great about Kyoto is as you're walking down the streets, you'll find a lot of little old temples tucked away, and they're not even famous, but they should be famous because they're amazing. But there's just so many. So yeah, Kyoto, so much to do. I would say as well, if you're here, you've got to try the matcha. Definitely dress up in a kimono. It can seem quite touristy, but it's really, really fun. And it's a great experience. And there's lots of day trips you can take from Kyoto. And for me, my favorite place is Nara. So it's not too far from Kyoto. You can do it in a day, and you get to feed the deer. You know, it's very famous. That is a place that's like no other place I've ever been to. It's completely unique, very, very pretty, very traditional, and it's got beautiful scenery, beautiful temples, lovely nature. It's really, really good there. Yeah, there's so much to do. I think also if you get the chance to go to big cities like Osaka, experience that because they've got great food there. There's great nightlife there. So if you get to experience that, definitely give that a try. But like I said, there's so much to do. It depends on what you're interested in. Just find, you know, what you're interested in and try and do as much as you can. So if you're interested in anime, there's a lot of stuff to do with anime. I mean, I'm not into it, but I know a lot of people that are. I'm interested in like temples and like the spiritual side of Japan. When I was in Hiroshima, I went to Miyajima Island. That's very spiritual. So yeah, just find what you're interested in, and there's going to be loads of stuff to do with that. So yeah, there's lots of things. I think also like try and see Tokyo, you know, try and see those big places, try and go on the bullet train. Yeah, but there's just so much to do.
Yeah, no, the idea of a fast, reliable train in the UK at the moment is something that's a wild dream for most of us. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, obviously, yeah, you worked on cruise ships before, but was it working on the cruise ships that informed your desire to travel, or did you always want to travel and that's why you ended up working on cruise ships and then getting into TEFL? And would you say like curiosity and wanderlust are really vital traits for a TEFL teacher?
Yeah, that's another good question. So I always wanted to travel. So that led me into cruise ships. But the thing is with travel is it can be very, very addictive. So you go to one place and, you want to go to another place and you want to keep traveling and seeing as much as you can. And it's hard to do that because, it's hard to fund and it's hard to see the world, and it can be expensive and quite difficult. But you definitely get addicted, and then you think, I'll do this place and I'll stop and I'll come back and I'll do something else. But you can't always do that because you're curious, you want to see more. And I think, to be a TEFL teacher, you have to be curious about the world and the country that you're going to. You have to want to learn about that country. Don't just go to the country and stay in your apartment. You want to go out and learn as much as you can and meet as many people as you can. And you want to make a difference to the place you're going. You want to form friendships. But I think being a little bit free-spirited and, enjoying traveling and filling up your backpack and going off, I think that's really good as a TEFL teacher, because you're going to have a better experience if you're willing to travel and you want to see things, you want to learn. It's going to be a much better experience. And I think if you're interested in traveling, I think everyone loves traveling, but if you really have that passion, this is a great job, because like I said, this job is funding that passion. By working as a teacher, you are making a difference, and teaching is a great profession. You're making a difference to your students' lives, but you're also getting a lot for yourself. You're in another country and you're gaining a lot of experiences. You're gaining knowledge. You're learning. So it's great. It's a great experience for everybody when you decide to go to a country and teach there.
Mm-hmm. So you haven't been a teacher for a super long time, but obviously, from the sounds of it, you've had loads of amazing experiences and loads of really different kinds of students. So what's been your favorite teaching experience in Japan thus far? And is there anything, have there been any particular students or funny experiences that have stood out?
Well, I've actually been really lucky. My students are all great. I think for me, just getting to know my students, and it's just those little things where they are happy to see you when they come in. And I can't always talk to my students in English, because if they're children, we can talk about things in the lesson, but outside the lesson, I can't always talk about things I want to say. But we can still laugh together. I remember we did a Halloween lesson and we made these pumpkin things, and then we had a picture together, and then all the students were trying to stand next to me, and it's those little things that are just really nice and positive, and you think, they're happy, they're enjoying it, and they like their teacher, which is nice. In terms of funny, I don't think anything really funny has happened. I think I've always kept the classes kind of under control. But who knows? The thing with teaching is I don't know what's going to happen. Probably just jinx myself now saying that. But each student has a different personality and a different character. But I remember one time I was doing the alphabet with the kids, and I was saying to them, what does this letter begin with? And they'll say an animal. And I remember we got to E, and I said, what begins with E? And they were like, Ellie. And it was those moments where it's just a great feeling that you're making that positive impact. And I hadn't been with them that long, so it was really nice.
So hopefully people are listening and watching, but there's going to be, there's someone who's a bit like you were a few years ago, somewhere, who's just dying to get out and explore the world as a teacher, but they don't think they can do it for whatever reason. What would you say to them?
You can do it, absolutely. And it's really uncomfortable at first. It can be a little bit challenging and difficult, but that feeling of being uncomfortable doesn't last very long. It goes very quickly. And if you have that desire to leave and go off, you have to do it, because if you don't, you're going to regret it. And, they say you regret the things you don't do rather than things you do. And even if you packed up your bag, you went to the other side of the world and it was a disaster, that's probably not going to happen. But if it was, you still did it. You still tried. You still had an experience. You're still living your life. But I'm pretty confident that if you move to the other side of the world to teach, you're probably going to love it. And it is going to be hard at first. It is going to be challenging because you're adapting to a whole new job, life, environment. But you will get to this point, and it'll be quite quickly, where it will all click and you'll step out into whatever country you're in and you'll just love it. And it'll be the best thing that you ever did. But just go for it. Like, just get on the plane, just go. Because it's all valuable experience in your life. And you can look back on it and you'll be really proud and happy that you did it. And it will be something that will stay with you forever. And you'll meet great people. And, you know, as a teacher, you are going to have good days and you're going to have really bad days as well. Days where your lesson plans just don't work or you're not feeling great. And that's just life. And that's in all jobs. So, you know, you've just got to, you know, reflect on it. Don't dwell on it, but just move on. And I guarantee the next time you go into that lesson, it won't happen again. If something bad happens, you would have learned from it. You know what to do. And it will always get easier. And there's no perfect lesson. There's no perfect student. There's no perfect teacher. It's all a learning, it's all a learning like curve, and it's part of it. But it does get easier. So I would say to people, just try, and it could turn out to be the best thing that you do.
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant advice. And on the subject of advice, we ask this to everyone that comes on the podcast, because it's often some of the best stuff, some of the strangest stuff often emerges from this. But what piece of advice, either about teaching or about life abroad in general, do you wish that you'd been given before you embarked on a TEFL career?
Yeah, I think I wish someone had sort of said to me, like, just be easy on yourself. Like, don't go in expecting to be perfect. Because I think sometimes we look at like social media and we see people with these lives, and we think that when we get off the plane that our life is going to be instantly like that, you know, but these people have been there for years. And it's like when you emigrate, you know, it takes years and years to get to that point where it looks dreamy. But don't expect it to be dreamy instantly. It's going to take hard work. You're going to have days where you think, oh, I can't do this, or why did I do this? But those days don't last long, and you do get to that point where it gets better and it gets easier. But yeah, I wish someone had just said, just be kind to yourself and just take it easy, and don't expect too much. Don't expect to be perfect, because you can't be perfect. And no one else is expecting you to be perfect either. And yeah, I wish someone had sort of said, because I always thought the hard bit was before you left, like the flights, the visas, all that sort of stuff. I wish someone had sort of said, no, it's hard when you get here. You got to keep working at it. But it's only for like a couple of months. And then when you get here, it's not instantly perfect. You still have to keep working at it. But like I said, it does get to that point where it clicks, and it gets easier and easier and easier as time goes on, and it gets more enjoyable. And I've just had the winter break, and I've just absolutely loved it. And I've come back to work now, and I feel like everything has just clicked, and I know what I'm doing, and I know my students, and it just feels more natural now. And I feel like a different and a better person than I did maybe before Christmas. You know, I feel like a lot more refreshed and like, yeah, a lot better. Like, I can do this.
Amazing. Well, Ellie, thanks so much for talking to us. And maybe in a couple of series' time, we'll catch up with you and find out how you're getting on in Japan or wherever you are. But yeah, it's been great chatting to you. I think there's so much that people are going to take on there. So thanks again, Ellie, and all the best with the rest of your career.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
You've been listening to I Taught English Abroad, a podcast series by the TEFL Org. To keep up to date with every episode, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your streaming platform of choice. And we love feedback, so feel free to leave us a review on any platform you like. For more information about the TEFL Org, or about teaching English as a foreign language in general, head on over to tefl.org. That's TEFL.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.